they give us these small stages. I'm told how many people are going to be on it, and then I try to get enough chairs, and then more people show up. But the good news is it's because everyone is here to appreciate who Peter David was, and that's never a bad thing. So,
Memorial book over here.
Oh,
for the
memorial
family.
book over
People
here,
like to sit
okay.
down and add remembrances to this. I'll be handing this off to Kathleen in about a week. I've been doing this for just about every memorial panel that I've shown up for. God knows there's been a lot of them in the little Shiva. So.
all right. So at the end of the panel, if you would like to put a remembrance
That's
or
why
a
I'm
thought
asking, so
of
they can put
appreciation that his widow can read, Kathleen, then feel free to do that at the end. Thank you, Glenn. All right, so
You probably work that out.
I feel like I've got my cacophony over here. So, yeah, exactly. Okay, we are here to have a serious, somewhat, sometimes occasionally remembrance of Peter, but as we all know, Peter had a good sense of humor, and everyone here that I'm aware of does as well, so we'll probably have some fun and sometimes humorous remembrances as well. So, I'll introduce
Now
myself.
the pressure's on. Now we
I
got
know,
it.
you gotta be funny. I'll introduce myself very briefly, because this one is definitely not about me. I'm Emily Whitten. I am the co-creator and co-writer of the Underfoot graphic novel series, middle grade graphic novel series about intelligent hamsters with special skills in a post-apocalyptic DC. And that's everything you need to know about me, because we're here for Peter. So I will briefly mention a couple things about Peter David. If you're sitting here, I'm sure you already know lots of things about him. But here's a couple things that I might not have known about him or was reminded of. So outside of the common things that we probably all know, that Peter worked in many, many different ways in comics and writing as a novelist, as a comics and graphic writer, etc. Some of the things he was most known for: The Incredible Hulk, Aquaman, Young Justice, Spider-Man 2099, and all kinds of other ones. Also, he was born in Maryland, so hooray for that. That was one of the things I was not aware of. A couple of the things I was aware of that I appreciated about Peter, who I was privileged to know, but not nearly as well as these folks here, is that he was also a fellow Sherlockian and an appreciator of Terry Pratchett. So he had some good bones in terms of the literature he appreciated that came into his writing in various and many ways. So I would like to have the panelists briefly introduce themselves and maybe just say one of the primary things that they either worked with or knew Peter from. So let's start all the way over. I feel like the stage is like, Glenn, why don't we start with you?
I was Peter's webmaster. I think the phrase, we weren't sure what the other part was. I used the word minion, he preferred the term stooge. To help out Peter with a bunch of things. I was also, I figured out I might have been the first civilian to actually tell him that his writing was good. I taught him at Marvel in the offices in 1985. He hadn't done a convention yet as a writer, and I had to say, hey, that story you're doing about killing Gene the Wolf, that's really kind of neat. and that started a good 40-year friendship and working relationship and a whole bunch of other stuff along the way.
But the first thing you said when you told him that, as I recall, was, and who the hell are you?
Pretty much he said, oh, you're here with McKenna, you're here with that Mark McKenna guy, yeah. And then literally as I was having this conversation with Peter, I heard a sound I'd only heard before in Kung Fu movies, that distinct shing. And I turned around and there was an Asian man pulling a katana out of the sheath. And he said, hey, have you met Maruyama? And I said, oh, hi, how you doing? What's with this? He said, oh, I got a meeting with Shooter in 5 minutes. And down the hallway. That was Marvel in the 80s, folks.
That's an exciting first meeting. All right. And so I'll come back to you, Steve, but Mike and Glenn worked together a lot, and Mike was just contributing to this because he and Glenn spent a lot of time together. So Mike, I would like you to go next and chat a little bit, then we'll go back over to Steve and loop around.
With respect to Peter David, I'm Mike Gold. I've been in comics since before most of you were born, and maybe since before I was born. My role with respect to Peter, my greatest role, was I teamed up with Danny O'Neill and took Peter to a way out of the way, right restaurant on 9th Avenue around 50th Street, a wonderful restaurant. And we spent the next 2 hours talking Peter into quitting Marvel and coming over to DC and write comics for us. He was hesitant for a variety of reasons. His loyalty to Calafiore was amazing,
Legendary.
and strong, and worthy, and Miss Carol and Peter now immensely. So he had a real loyalty to her, and I understand that, and I appreciate that. He also wasn't that secure as a writer, because he was still pretty new to it. You know, this is like 86? I'm thinking.
87,
Yeah, and it was pre-COVID, that's all I know. And he came over and did all this spectacular stuff, but was grumpy about it. Well, that didn't make him unusual as a freelancer, but I always thought that Peter was the model for Harvey Bullock. And in many ways, he could have been. He wasn't, I don't think. No. Let's just hope he wasn't. But there was a lot of Harvey Bullock in Peter, and I think that's what made him a great writer, because he didn't care about the norms. And any good communicator, particularly in this hyperbolic communications world we've been living in, needs to be a little grumpy and needs to shout a little bit to get attention and do something that people have never seen before, and Peter David made a career out of that.
Thank you, Mike. Steve.
Yeah. I would actually say that, interestingly enough, with Peter, I think he was very sure of his own talent and completely unsure of his own talent.
Yeah.
Because I think that he did break ground. I still remember one of my favorite things in one of his early Spider-Man stories was when he took Spider-Man out to the wilds of New Jersey and had a little girl come up, because Spider-Man was standing around looking around for some place to shoot his webs, and there was no place to shoot his webs. And this little girl comes up on a three-wheel tricycle going, "Hi, I'm Shayna. Would you like to ride my big wheel?" And I thought that was just something no other person would write, partly because Shayna was his daughter, but also partly because he just thought completely outside the box. On almost every...
Oh,
Well,
just do that part too.
my name is Steve Saffel, and when I first met Peter was in 1983 when I joined Marvel in direct sales publicity, and Peter was in direct sales marketing. And actually, one of my earliest memories was Carol Kalish looking at him and going, "Why is your brother-in-law on the comp list?" And Peter David's brother-in-law came off of the comp list to get all the free comics. But I think he managed to get his brother-in-law quite a few comics in the meanwhile. But Peter had come to Marvel, I think, from Playboy Press.
Yeah, well, stop along the way. I'll fill in when it's my turn.
Okay, good. But Peter was fascinating because he both came to comics from outside of comics, and yet as a deep and ingrained fan of comics. And his writing was really unlike anything that people were doing. And I don't think most of the editors at Marvel for a long time knew what the hell to think, because they just thought of him as a sales guy. And what they didn't recognize for a while was just how talented a wordsmith he was. He just knew how to put the words together, and in ways a lot of other people never thought of.
Thanks, Steve. Ron, do you want to go ahead?
If I just talk loud, do you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes? Okay.
They're hiding in the back for some reason. Is that you, Mike?
You get what you pay for.
They're leaving.
Sorry.
Well timed.
All right, now that we got those two guys out of here.
Now we're going to tell you the real story.
We're gonna work a little dirty now. met Peter, Peter was just one of those dudes that you always knew. You always knew when he was in the room, too. Peter and I co-wrote Marvel vs. DC, which until, a couple of weeks ago, was the last Marvel DC crossover. And if we have time, I will tell you tales out of school about that process.
Please.
Because
We'll take as much time as we have.
it was not the smoothest part of the whole operation. Because Peter and I are very different writers, but we were both working at Marvel and DC at the time. This was in the halcyon days when you could work at Marvel and DC at the same time, except for that guy. That guy's doing it right there now. That's Philip Kennedy Johnson. Applause for him. But we wound up on that book because we were both writing regular monthlies at Marvel and DC. So they kind of went, well, these guys are fairly well behaved. Let's let them try it.
I gotta know something.
They probably know both universes. So if we have time, I'll tell you some stories, but I don't want to take up time. I now pass the mic to the famous Robert Greenberger.
Pass the mic. So, let me fill in some background. Peter was like all of us. He grew up a fan of pop culture, comics, science fiction, movies, television, Sherlock Holmes, The Muppets, whatever.
Mystery Science Theater.
Yes. And in the late 1970s, he started attending a number of conventions in the area, including one called August Party that was down in the Washington, D.C. area. And he started writing parodies of movies for them to perform at the convention, which was the thing. And he would be in some and he would write some. And that was the fan part of Peter. The professional part, he trained to be a journalist. And that was from his father was a journalist, Peter became a journalist. And from there, took an editorial job at Playboy Press, started writing. He had done a series of books under the name David Peters, the Simon books.
Are you saying he was actually at Playboy for the articles?
Well, he also did some softcore porn for them too. So.
Yes, he also wrote some stuff every once in a while. If you were reading girly magazines in the 70s, you might have been jerking off to one of his letters.
Somebody had to go
You
there.
folks has told me about the other stuff you've done, and been like, don't mention it in the panel. I don't mean just these guys specifically, but I hear about this a lot.
Let me point out that the guy who was editing and running art directing Playboy books, I think before Peter got there, was Skip Williamson, the noted underground cartoonist and Trudette, and creator of Snappy Sandy Smoot. So it's weird what people would be reading Playboy for.
So Playboy Press did not do particularly well, and in 1981, Peter finds himself out of work. They've laid off the editorial department. A convention friend of his, a guy named Howard Weinstein, calls me up. I'm at Starlight Press running comic scene at the time, and Howie says, my friend Peter David just lost his editorial job. Can he write anything for you at comic scene? And I said, sure. And get Peter on the phone, make introductions. And I said, look, the comic shops are growing. Not everybody knows what they are, how they work, because we're a newsstand distributed magazine back in those days when that happened. And I said, the audience could use some education. So Peter said, sure, put his journalism hat on. Went and interviewed a number of people, including Carol Kalish at Marvel. He so impressed Carol with his questions and his personality that later, not that long thereafter, she reached out to interview him for a job at Marvel, which got him started at Marvel. Then, a few years later, I'm at DC. I get a call from Peter. This is 1986 or so. And Peter says, Michael just offered me the Phantom. I'm thinking of leaving my contract at Marvel, but I'm really nervous because the Phantom is only a mini-series. Will there be other work? I said, sure, I'll put you on Star Trek. And so Mike started the ball rolling. And he wrote Star Trek for me for a number of years and went from there. And then came Aquaman.
By the way, to let you know, this Carol Kalish person we're mentioning is one of the people who is responsible for the direct market actually working. She was the second director of sales for the direct sales market, and so she was known for bringing in folks who had different ways of thinking because that was her specialty.
Thanks.
Yeah, and she also talked a lot of comic book store owners into buying
Cash register?
cash registers.
Yeah, co-op program.
Yes,
Yes.
and it was amazing. I saw her do this on several occasions, explaining to a retailer why a cash register was a good idea.
And eventually they got the point.
40 years ago, in this building, when Diamond still had conferences here, yes, that's what. Yeah.
In this building.
In this very building, watching some of this stuff go on, and Carol saying, no, the cash registers, they can tell you how many books you sold from Marvel versus how many books you sold from DC, if you code them right. So, yeah, we want you to do this so you order more Marvel books.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And before that, she worked with Peter, so now we're going to talk about Aquaman.
Who are you?
We're going to throw over to Jim.
I'm Jim Calafiore. I've been working in the industry 37 years, 38 years. And I started in small press with Caliber Press, moved into Valiant, and Valiant had a heyday. And then out of there, I did a little bit for Marvel, and my basically fourth job in the industry was working for Kevin Dooley and doing Aquaman. With Peter, I got a call from Kevin because I had dropped some samples off, and it was kind of funny because he says, "You want to do Aquaman?" I'm like, "Yeah, definitely. You like that sample of Aquaman I had in the package?" He said, "What?" I hear ruffling of paper. He's like, "Oh yeah, okay." So I'm like, "Oh cool. I love Aquaman. I've always loved Aquaman. I'm big into nature programs, so I got a lot of fish to draw and all this stuff. And I love the orange and green costume." He goes, "Well." He's not wearing that. He's missing a hand and all this stuff. Basically, I popped in on issue 5 for fill-in, and 10, and slowly more. And around issue 34, I became regular. And I worked with Peter all the way till the time they fired us all. Which, I can't remember what issue that was, but then they brought on Larson and somebody else, and we know how well that went. It's like 49, maybe. And that was, that was my time with Peter. It was a great time with Peter. I did a little bit of Captain Marvel with him, and then we actually had a weird little project we tried to get off the ground that never got off the ground, but I can talk about that at the end. But he was, it was the height of Peter David. I mean, he was doing Hulk and Aquaman and everything else. And I posted this after he passed on Facebook. Very few creators get to redefine a character in a significant way, like Walt Simonson with Thor. He did it with 2 characters. Define them for a generation, define them in a very specific way. It's tough to do. It's easy to redefine them. It's hard to redefine them successfully and get that noted for it. But before we deify him, I do have to say he did have his faults. We had a discussion a couple of years ago, and he told me he really liked the Inhumans TV show.
And you were like, bye,
I said,
see you later.
keep it there, that's good enough.
Amazing, amazing.
That's the only Marvel show I ever saw. You were at Caliber.
Caliber Press.
That was a great place.
Well, the Crow came out of there, O'Barr,
Yeah.
Vince Locke, Guy Davis, Mike Lark, Bendis. So many people
Yeah.
started there. It was a great.
It was an
great
amazing operation.
Made no money.
No.
It was broke, but it was
No.
fantastic to
But you're
just come out of there.
in
Phil Hester
Detroit.
came out.
Detroit, you didn't have to make money.
No, I wasn't there.
No, I meant you, but Caliber.
Yeah, Cal. No, it was what's his face? Oh man, I'm blanking on his name. Gary Reed, who owned shops or a shop, and he started publishing. And that's when you had the more flourishing distribution on independence.
Right.
It was great.
But Peter didn't write for Caliber, so nobody cares.
Yeah, I know.
Are you sure? I mean, you work for everybody else.
He did right for everybody.
Are you ever not an editor?
No.
Bob and I are rolling things along here. But as you can tell, we have collectively a great knowledge of the history of comic book publishing
collectively, if you put
I'm
all
sorry.
these years together, I think you go back to Gutenberg.
I think we have a dinosaur wandering around that was about the same age, so
Um,
no offense, everyone.
Drawn by Walt, it's fine.
I'm
There you
sorry.
go. It's
That's
on
right.
the wall, yeah.
That's right.
I'm sorry, your definition of a dark side is he liked the Inhumans TV show. My definition of Peter's dark side is he wrote an entire he edited an entire anthology where every single short story I end up a corpse. So you want to talk about dark side?
Thank you for reminding me
Yes,
of the
every
gem of Peters. Thank you.
We keep waiting for that to go into the nonfiction section.
I outlived him, so just be careful. Just
So there.
Yeah, but who's got the movie rights? Who's got the streaming rights?
I'm not sure. I mean, I only know, watch, when they sign off on this thing, it's going to be a sequel. They're already talking a sequel to this book, and I can't figure out whether it's from audience demand or author demand.
There's a great reality series.
Talking about the streaming rights, just to flesh out that biography.
Yeah.
You know, he and Bill Mumy from Lost in Space, he and Bill Mumy created a TV show for Nickelodeon, Space Cases. He wrote, episodes of Ben 10 in animation, Babylon 5 for J. Michael Straczynski in live action. He wrote some cheap-ass science fiction, movies for Charles Band, and
The Transfers films, yeah.
yeah, and Oblivion.
Cowboys and Aliens, gee, that'll never work.
But he was a versatile writer. He wrote video games. He wrote a column at the Comics Buyers Guide. He got into feuds with John Byrne and Todd McFarlane and lived to tell the tale.
True, and we cannot forget he won several awards for his work over
Yes.
time, which we should remember with honor because those are darn hard to get, including an Eisner and, Julie, I believe it was, and at least 3+ other awards that I could probably look up if I'm really
He
good
just
at
got
this.
the,
There we go, the Wizard Fan Award, because
Right.
a lot of people loved him, as we
But,
still do.
Now, I gotta say one thing, because we haven't talked a lot about his prose fiction. And he did a lot of prose fiction, and he did a lot of really good prose fiction.
Yes.
And I was able to hire him for a few novels when I was at Del Rey Books. And I have to say that I think Peter had the advantage of words just flowed out of him. I honestly think it was a very instinctive, intuitive thing. And I think that led to the confidence in his own work, and I think it led to the lack of confidence because I think that it came so easily to him, and yet it was a part and parcel. He bled words.
Oh, yeah.
And it was amazing.
It's not even the fact that he wrote more Star Trek novels than anybody else, period, right now. The fact that he turned them around as fast as he did, while having writing 4 monthly comic books and writing an occasional play and occasionally writing useless stories that he just had to get out of his head, even though we knew there was absolutely no market for it before the term fan fiction ever really became a thing. But I mean, he would also, his book Anxiety, which was a good 100,000 words or whatever it was easily, he turned around in 2 weeks.
That's insane.
Yeah.
As a writer, I feel
it was-
very underaccomplished right now.
He was writing so fast, he couldn't come up with names for the characters fast enough. Which is why the bad guys in that particular novel are Nisi, Asa, Singh, Ken, and Vitch. All 5 words in his book. Yes. And that's also why later on, the chief medical officer of the USS Enterprise is Dr. Howman, because I happened to interrupt him in the middle of this, drop him off some Aquaman issues because he was just taking over the book, and I handed him a bunch of Action Comics that he needed for research. He's like, I need to put this in. Oh, right, Dr. Howman, fine. I had no idea.
I love that. And you all are kind of touching on something that I did want to ask, which is like, we're hearing a good amount of amazing things about his craft, and I want to know from each of you, is there a particular work of his by which you were either inspired or it really meant something to you, or it's just like the favorite of the ones? You can pick one you worked on, but you can also pick one that you didn't work on but experienced.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't Aquaman. We did some great stuff on Aquaman. My favorite, I like lot of creators can get those standalone. And it was the issue of the Hulk with Sam Wilson dying of AIDS.
Jim Wilson.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Jim Wilson, yeah, sorry. Jim
Yeah.
Wilson. That was just,
Yeah.
some like, exemplary writing. The whole structure of just that issue was really excellent.
Whoever would like to.
His work with George Perez. I mean, I loved his Hulk.
Future Perfect. Yeah.
And but also he did get back to go back to some fairly softcore with what was it?
Saxon Violence.
Saxon Violence. Yeah.
Which I love.
Yeah, it was
It
just,
was fun.
but they worked so well together too.
It's Peter, the last conversation I think I had with Peter is at some godforsaken convention, which means not Baltimore. And the
Good
last
save, good save, Mike. Good save.
no, I'm here for a reason.
Oh my God.
And I told him how much I liked his work. I said, you're one of my absolute favorite writers. And he was astonished.
Yeah.
You know, you would think a guy with all the accolades, with the experience that he has, with the work that he has shown, I would have to say overall his Hulk work is what sticks with me the most. I think a lot of people would say that. A lot of good people wrote the Hulk over the years and probably will in the future. Walt Simonson drew a great Hulk that actually had bad breath. Peters was the best of them.
Yeah.
No offense, no.
Bob, do you have
I'm racking my brain for a single one to.
I know, it's hard to
It's
pick
hard.
and choose,
I
right?
defer to
But-
Ron.
Okay, Ron, do you have a
What
thought
about
to go with?
Q&A?
No, that's a good one.
Oh, God. I made the mistake of reading that book. It had just come out on my honeymoon. I was reading on the flight out there and going, this may not be the best choice of reading material for the flight out. But that was all.
That is so confusing to me.
What? That,
You were reading it.
I was reading Q&A on the plane as I was flying out on my honeymoon, yeah. It had just come out. It was also weird because
I mean,
his
it's on the
daughter,
flight, like.
his daughter, Ariel is
It's honeymoon.
Well, yeah. Ariel, it was a long flight, yeah. Ariel has been born in Carol Kaylee this time. It was just when it was a surreal, I don't remember. Yeah, so.
Ron, do you have
Ron,
one?
Ron, go ahead.
Mike's answer was the right one, which is the Hulk. I think because, you know, that was an era in which long runs were not uncommon. Now,
12 years though, that was.
now if you get a couple of years, you're
Yeah.
doing well. But I think because Peter was able to reinvent that title a number of times during the title,
Yeah.
the Hulk was not the same all the way through that. I think it was a fascinating match of creator and character that I don't think, looking at Peter's work and looking at the Hulk, you would go, oh, those two belong together. They don't really occur to you as a natural fit, but they obviously were. And that was when I was starting in comics. Peter was knee deep in his Hulk run, and that was one of the books I read every month because that was, to me, that's what kind of work we were supposed to be doing, to bring people back every month. So I would say the Hulk, absolutely. And also, probably, as a secondary answer, Atlantis Chronicles, which was kind of a forgotten title, but, and again, maybe not.
He hasn't forgotten it.
Not the sort of thing that you would naturally say, oh, that's a Peter David book. But just a great sort of unrealized gem in a lot of ways.
So I'm going to offer up, because there are too many, but I'm thinking of the first Sir Apropos novel he wrote for Pocket Books.
Yes.
Because there, you know, you've done a couple of standalone novels here and there, but Sir Apropos, he had created a character that had staying power, like, you know, wound up doing 4 books over the years.
The full name.
Sure, apropos of nothing, yes.
You
So,
buried
no,
the lead.
sorry, it starts with that joke of a name, but he wrote a really interesting character in this world he had created, and